The desert holds secrets that run deeper than blood. Under a vast New Mexico sky, Kiyanni Redhawk's weathered hands froze on barbed wire, his throat tightening at the sight before him. His daughter Tala, missing for 3 months, stood chained to his own fence line, her skin bearing the mark of men who harvest the young like crops. Their eyes met across years of silence. Whatever had driven her away no longer mattered. The desert night erupted with drone lights sweeping the canyon walls. Cartel scouts were closing in, their radio chatter carried on the wind. They wanted their property back, but they didn't understand what they'd awakened in this former army scout, a father's rage that would turn sacred Apache land into a hunting ground. Can a broken family forge a resistance strong enough to break generations of exploitation? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn broke over the Redhawk ranch like it had for 40 years, indifferent to the man who rose to meet it. Kiyanni's boots left prints in the dust of a yard that had once held his daughter's laughter. The drought had taken that too, along with half his cattle and most of his hope. He pinned his grandfather's silver and turquoise bolo tie to his collar, the weight familiar against his weathered skin. Next to it, in the cracked mirror, glinted his Army Scout medal, a reminder of another life, before the ranch, before fatherhood, before failure. "You served one master to protect another," his father had said when he enlisted. The old man hadn't lived to see Kiyanni return to tend their ancestral lands. Some days, like today, that seemed a mercy. The coffee pot gurgled on the stove, its aroma filling the kitchen where Tala had once sat doing homework. 3 months since she'd left, no calls, no letters. Just absence and questions that grew heavier each day. From the porch, Kiyanni surveyed what remained of his heritage. 600 acres of high desert terrain, carved by wind and perseverance from the unforgiving New Mexico landscape. To the east, metallic structures rose from the horizon, the Harland Mining Corporation expanding its reach. They'd been buying up ranches for 5 years now, hungry for the lithium beneath. 3 neighboring families had already sold. "Morning, amigo." Miguel Ortiz leaned against his battered truck at the property line, hat tipped against the rising sun. "Any word?" Kiyanni shook his head. Miguel was one of the few who still asked about Tala. "There were strangers on the North Ridge yesterday," Miguel said, voice dropping. "Not Harland's usual surveyors, different type." "Cartel," the word hung between them. "Maybe. They didn't look like they were scouting for drugs, more like hunting." Kiyanni nodded, his jaw tight. The borderlands had their own ecosystem of predators. After Miguel left, Kiyanni retrieved his rifle from behind the door, a habit from his scouting days, and began his morning patrol. A hawk circled overhead, its shadow dancing across the red earth. His ancestors had named themselves after such birds, believing they carried messages between worlds. "Any messages today?" he asked the empty sky. The wind answered, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Kiyanni knelt, examining fresh tire tracks cutting across his eastern fence line. Too deep for ATVs, wrong pattern for ranch trucks. That evening, as darkness claimed the land, Kiyanni sat cleaning his father's knife. The blade had skinned deer and carved cedar since before he was born. The handle, worn smooth by generations of Redhawk hands, fit his palm like it belonged there. On the table beside him lay a faded photograph. Tala at 12, holding up her first tracking beads, her smile wide beneath the same sky that now watched him drink alone. He'd taught her to read the land, to respect its secrets. Later, she'd called those lessons useless, outdated. "What good is knowing how to track a deer when I need to know calculus?" She'd demanded in their final argument. The coyotes began their nightly chorus as Kiyanni loaded his pockets with shells. Something had been triggering his cattle lately, sending them into panicked stampedes that resulted in broken fences and lost stock he couldn't afford to replace. He slipped into the darkness, moving with the silent precision that had once made him valuable to the U.S. government. The night welcomed him, wrapping him in familiar shadows. This was his time, when the land spoke clearest to those who knew how to listen. The moon rose, bathing the desert in silver light. Kiyanni walked his fence line, checking for breaks, his mind on Miguel's warning. At the northern boundary, where his property met public land, he paused. A sound carried on the wind, not coyote, not cattle. Human. The sound came again, a whimper, then a choked sob. Human, female. Kiyanni crouched, moving toward the noise with measured steps. The moonlight caught on something metal ahead, flashing at the base of his own fence line. His heart quickened as he approached, rifle ready. What he saw froze his blood. A figure huddled against the fence post, wrists bound with heavy chains to the barbed wire. Dark hair fell across her face, but he would know that profile in the darkest night. Tala! His voice broke on her name. Her head jerked up, eyes wide with fear, then recognition. Dad? The word emerged as a croak from cracked lips. Kiyanni dropped to his knees beside her, hands hovering over the chains, afraid to touch and confirm this wasn't a mirage born of longing. What happened? Who did this? They'll be back, she whispered, eyes darting to the shadows beyond. They track us, all of us. He pulled wire cutters from his belt, never without them on night patrols, and began working on her restraints. The metal links were industrial grade, meant to hold more than a 17-year-old girl. How did you? Later, she interrupted, wincing as the chain pulled against raw skin. We have about 20 minutes before they check this section again. As the last link gave way, Tala collapsed against him. Kiyanni caught her weight, feeling how much lighter she was than 3 months ago. That's when he saw it. A brand on her inner wrist, still red and healing. A geometric symbol he didn't recognize. What is this? His fingers hovered over the mark. Their sign, for the mines. Her voice was flat, drained of emotion. They mark all their property. Property. The word ignited something primal in Kiyanni's chest. He helped her stand, supporting her weight as she struggled to find balance. When she stepped away from the fence, the moonlight revealed the full extent of her condition: torn clothes, bruised arms, hollowed cheeks. How many others? He asked. Dozens, maybe more. Tala stiffened suddenly, her gaze fixed on the distant ridge. They're coming. Kiyanni followed her line of sight. Pinpricks of light moved across the darkness, headlamps, too many for a standard patrol. Can you walk? She nodded, determination hardening her expression. I can run if I have to. The house is 2 miles. Then we better move fast. They set off across the desert, Kiyanni matching his pace to hers. Questions burned in his throat. Where had she been? What had happened? Who had taken her? But survival came first. The night air carried the distant sound of engines. They used drones, Tala said between labored breaths. Thermal imaging. We need cover. Kiyanni led them toward a narrow arroyo that cut across his property, a natural trench that might mask their heat signatures. As they descended into it, the distinctive whine of a drone passed overhead. Down, he ordered, pulling Tala against the dirt wall. The drone hovered, its red light blinking in the darkness. For 30 seconds that stretched like hours, neither of them breathed. Then the machine moved on, continuing its search pattern. They have a whole operation, Tala whispered once it was safe. Mining camps. They take kids from reservations, border towns, nobody who'll be missed. Kiyanni's hand instinctively went to his knife. You were missed. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise, perhaps even doubt. Then it hardened into resolve. We need to reach the house, she said. I have to show you something. A distant engine roared to life, headlights sweeping the ridge they'd just left. They found the cut chains, Kiyanni said. We've got company. They reached the ranch house with the sound of vehicles growling in the distance. Kiyanni bolted the door behind them, moving with military precision to the cabinet where he kept his shotgun. They'll have jammers, Tala said, her eyes darting to the landline phone. Don't bother. He tried anyway. Dead silence. Cell phone too, no signal. How do you know their tactics? Kiyanni asked, gathering shells from a drawer. Tala sank into a kitchen chair, exhaustion momentarily winning over fear. I've been watching them for weeks, planning my escape. Her hand went to her backpack, clutching it protectively. That's why they want me back so badly. I know things. Kiyanni grabbed a medical kit from under the sink and knelt before his daughter, examining her wrists where the chains had cut deep. This needs cleaning, he said. opening an antiseptic wipe. She hissed as it touched raw skin but didn't pull away. The familiarity of the moment, tending her wounds like he had done when she was small, made Kiyanni's chest tighten. "What's in the backpack?" he asked, wrapping gauze around her wrist. "Evidence, maps of the operation, names," she pulled it closer, "and something else, a diary from another girl. Rosa, she didn't make it out." Headlights swept across the front windows. Kiyanni moved to the side, peering through the curtain. 3 black SUVs approached the house, men with rifles spilling out. "We need to go. Now." He grabbed a go-bag from the closet, always prepared, a habit from his scouting days, and stuffed it with extra ammunition, water bottles and jerky. Tala was already at the back door, peering into the darkness. "Where?" "The old cavalry fort, about 8 miles north, underground tunnels, multiple exits." Recognition flashed in her eyes. "The place with the stories, where the Apache warriors hid." Kiyanni nodded, surprised she remembered. He'd taken her there once, years ago, told her the legends of their ancestors who had used the labyrinth beneath the fort to outmaneuver American soldiers. "I need you to remember everything I taught you about tracking," he said, checking his rifle, "because we're going to need to disappear." The first pounding on the front door came as they slipped out the back, keeping low beneath the window line. Kiyanni led them toward the barn, moving in the shadows between outbuildings. Behind them, the sound of splintering wood, the front door giving way. Shouts in Spanish and English filled the night air. "Spread out, find the girl." Inside the barn, Kiyanni pulled up a trapdoor hidden beneath hay bales, revealing a narrow tunnel. "Old water culvert," he explained. "Runs under the property line." Tala went first, sliding into the darkness. Kiyanni followed, pulling the door shut above them. The earthen passage smelled of soil and time, barely wide enough for his shoulders. They crawled for nearly 10 minutes before emerging in a dry creek bed a quarter-mile from the house. In the distance, flashlight beams crisscrossed the property. "They brought a lot of manpower just for one escaped girl," Kiyanni observed, helping Tala up the embankment. "I told you, I have proof." She patted the backpack. "Names, locations, ledgers. Everything needed to bring down their operation." A new sound joined the chaos behind them, the rhythmic thump of helicopter blades. "They called in air support," Kiyanni said grimly. Tala's face hardened. "Victor Harland. He owns the mining company and the trafficking ring. He'll be in that helicopter." "The mining magnate? The one buying up all the land?" She nodded. "The lithium deposits are worth billions, and desperate workers are cheaper than machines." They crested a ridge, the landscape opening before them, miles of desert broken by mesas and arroyos, bathed in moonlight. And far to the north, the silhouette of the old fort against the stars. "If we reach the tunnels before dawn," Kiyanni said, "we might have a chance." Behind them, the helicopter's searchlight began sweeping the desert in widening circles. They moved in silence across the moonlit terrain, 2 shadows against the vast desert. Kiyanni led them through a narrow wash where the soft sand would hold their footprints only until the next wind. Old habits from his scouting days returned with practiced ease, walking on the balls of his feet, choosing rocky ground when possible, stopping periodically to listen. Tala kept pace behind him, her movement betraying both exhaustion and determination. When they paused in the shelter of a juniper grove, Kiyanni pulled a battered canteen from his pack and offered it to her first. "You remembered the tracking lessons," he said, watching her scan their back trail. "Some things stick, even when you try to forget them." Her voice held an edge that cut through the night air. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. 3 months of absence lay unspoken in that space. Kiyanni reached into his shirt pocket and withdrew a small, folded photograph. Tala at 12, standing beside him at the creek that ran through their property during the rainy season. Both were smiling. A rarity, even then. "I keep this with me," he said simply. Tala glanced at it, her expression unreadable in the darkness. "Mom took that picture 2 weeks before she got sick." The mention of his wife sent a familiar ache through Kiyanni's chest. Elena had been gone 5 years now. Cancer, quick and merciless. "You left on her birthday," he said quietly. Tala's shoulders stiffened. "I found her letters. The ones you kept in your closet." Kiyanni's breath caught. The letters. Elena's final thoughts, written during her last days. Things she wanted to tell their daughter when she was old enough. Things about their family, their history. About Kiyanni. Those weren't meant for me to read. When exactly were you planning to share them? When I turned 30, 40. Anger sharpened her words. She wanted me to know about our real family history, about the mine, about what happened to her parents. A distant drone hummed overhead, saving Kiyanni from responding. They pressed against the juniper's trunk, holding still until it passed. "We can't stay here," he said, rising to a crouch. "You can't avoid this conversation forever," Tala countered, but followed his lead. They continued north, the landscape gradually shifting as they entered older terrain, land that had been Apache territory long before borders and deeds. Kiyanni pointed to a peculiar formation of rocks. "Your great-grandmother used to say that was the spine of Grandfather Mountain, who lay down to rest and never woke up." Tala nodded. "I remember. She said all landmarks have stories. She also said knowing those stories meant you could never truly be lost." A coyote darted across their path, pausing briefly to regard them with luminous eyes before disappearing into the night. "Good omen," Kiyanni murmured. "You still believe in omens?" "I believe in paying attention to the world around us." They fell silent again as they navigated a steep embankment. Halfway up, Tala stumbled, a small cry escaping her lips as she clutched her ankle. Kiyanni was at her side instantly. "Let me see." She hesitated, then extended her leg. He gently probed the joint. "Not broken. Sprained, maybe." He unwrapped his bandana and bound it tightly around her ankle. "Can you continue?" Tala tested her weight on it, wincing. "I have to." In the momentary vulnerability, Kiyanni saw flashes of the child she had been, stubborn, resilient, unwilling to admit pain. His daughter, despite everything. The wail of a siren echoed across the desert. Police, but not coming to help. "Sheriff Collins," Tala said grimly. "He's on Harland's payroll, has been for years." Kiyanni's jaw tightened. "Tom Collins? We served together." "Well, he serves different masters now." The old fort appeared and disappeared on the horizon as they traversed the rolling landscape, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden behind ridges and mesas, still miles away. Dawn was perhaps 3 hours off. The helicopter continued to search, its spotlight cutting bright swaths through the darkness behind them. The desert played tricks with sound. What seemed distant could be dangerously close. Kiyanni tensed as voices carried on the night breeze, Spanish, clipped and professional. Not the usual border crossers or drug runners. These were trained men. "Down," he whispered, pulling Tala into the shadow of a boulder. Flashlight beams swept the ridge above them. 3 figures moved along the crest, silhouetted against the stars. Even from this distance, Kiyanni could make out tactical gear and rifle outlines. "Those aren't local police," he murmured. "Private security," Tala whispered. "Ex-military. Harland hires them from overseas. No connections here, no questions asked." One man raised a device to his face. Night vision. Kiyanni recognized the distinctive profile of military-grade goggles. "They'll have thermal too," he said, calculation replacing fear. "We need to split their attention." From his pack, he removed a lighter and a small tin of fire starter. Tala watched as his fingers, still nimble after decades of desert survival, constructed a simple time-delay fuse using a cigarette and the flammable paste. "When this ignites, it'll draw them north," he explained. "We'll circle south, then continue west toward the fort." Tala's eyes widened slightly. "You did this in the army?" "I did many things in the army." His voice carried the weight of unshared stories. "Some I'm not proud of. This one might save our lives." He placed the device in a hollow beneath a creosote bush, angled to catch the dry brush beyond. With a flick, the cigarette began its slow burn. 15 minutes, he said, turning away. "Move quietly." They crept along a dry stream bed, using its banks for cover. The night had grown colder, and Tala's breaths came in visible puffs. Kiyanni handed her his jacket without comment. After 10 minutes of careful navigation, the crack of gunfire shattered the night. Single shots controlled, not aimed at them, testing the source of the newly sparked fire. "They're distracted." Kiyanni whispered, leading them up and out of the wash. They'd covered barely 50 yards when a voice called from the darkness ahead. Al-Tuwahi. A figure materialized from behind a stand of mesquite, rifle raised. The scout had circled ahead, anticipating their movement. Time slowed as Kiyanni assessed the threat. One visible gunman, possibly more nearby, too far to rush him, rifle aimed at Tala, not him. "Senor Harland wants his property returned, undamaged," the man said, his English precise with a Colombian accent. "The girl comes with me. You can live, old man." "I am not property," Tala spat, her defiance masking fear. The gunman's smile was cold in the moonlight. "The brand on your wrist says otherwise." Kiyanni shifted his weight imperceptibly, drawing the man's attention. "My daughter is coming home with me." "Your daughter?" The gunman laughed. "She is inventory now, Unit TF 273, quite valuable with her education level." Kiyanni's hand moved with the practiced speed that had once made him legendary among his fellow scouts. The hunting knife from his boot found its target in the gunman's shoulder before the man could react. As the rifle discharged harmlessly into the ground, Kiyanni closed the distance. The fight was brief, brutal, and silent. When it ended, the scout lay unconscious, and Kiyanni was removing night vision goggles from the man's head. He turned to find Tala staring, her expression a mixture of shock and something else, respect perhaps. "You killed him?" Her voice trembled slightly. "No, but he'll have a headache when he wakes." Kiyanni secured the man with his own zip ties. "Take his radio, and this." He handed her the night vision goggles. She accepted them gingerly. "I've never seen you like that. There's a lot we don't know about each other anymore." He retrieved his knife, wiping the blade clean. "That's going to change if we survive tonight." In the distance, shouts indicated the others had discovered the distraction. Soon they would find their missing companion. "We need to move faster now," Kiyanni said, scanning the terrain ahead. "The fort is still 4 miles north." The helicopter's rhythmic thumping grew louder, its searchlight sweeping methodically across the desert floor. A cluster of massive boulders provided temporary shelter, a natural fortress with a narrow entrance that Kiyanni deemed defensible. Inside the stone enclosure, they allowed themselves a brief rest. While Tala kept watch with the night vision goggles, Kiyanni examined the radio they'd taken from the scout. "Encrypted," he muttered, turning the dial carefully. "Military grade." "They all have them," Tala said, her back against the cool stone. "Everything about the operation is high-tech, except for the labor." Kiyanni glanced at her, the question he'd been avoiding finally surfacing. "What happened to you, Tala?" She was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Then she unzipped her backpack and removed a worn composition notebook. "Rosa's journal," she explained, handling it with reverence. "She kept it hidden for months. Gave it to me the night before they took her to the deep shaft." Her voice faltered. "She never came back." Kiyanni accepted the journal, opening it carefully. Pages of neat handwriting documented names, dates, locations, a meticulous record of horror. 3 processing facilities," Tala continued while he read. "The main one is underground, beneath Harland's corporate headquarters. They bring kids in from reservations, border towns, homeless shelters, anywhere people might not look too hard for missing teenagers. And no one investigates. The ones who try disappear. There's a sheriff's deputy named Ortega who started asking questions. They made an example of him." Kiyanni turned a page in the journal, finding a crude map. "This is how you escaped." Tala nodded. "Rosa mapped the patrol schedules, blind spots in the camera coverage. I memorized it all before I made my move." Her eyes hardened. "I'm not the only one who got out. There's a girl named Lucia who escaped 2 weeks before me, and a boy, Daniel. Where are they now?" "I don't know. We plan to separate, make it harder for them to find us all." She took back the journal, fingers tracing the pages. "But I know where they're taking the next shipment. Tomorrow night, 20 kids from a detention center in El Paso." Understanding dawned on Kiyanni. "That's why they're hunting you so aggressively. You can expose the whole operation." "Not just expose it. Stop it." Determination replaced fear in her voice. "I didn't run away 3 months ago, Dad. I was looking for Mom's family." Her letters said they were forced off their land when the first mines came, that they tried to fight back. Kiyanni's jaw tightened. Elena's parents had died when she was young, or so he'd told Tala. The truth was more complicated. Your grandfather led protests against the original Harland mining claim, he admitted. The company hired men to intimidate the protesters. Things escalated. They killed them, Tala said flatly. That's what Mom wrote, and you never told me. Elena wanted to protect you from that history. Or you did. Tala's accusation hung between them. I went looking for answers and found something worse. The same company, the same family, still destroying lives. Kiyanni reached for her hand, surprised when she didn't pull away. I'm sorry, Tala, for keeping the truth from you, for not being the father you needed. She stared at their joined hands. I thought you didn't care when I left, that you were relieved. I searched for you every day, he said quietly, asked at every town within 100 miles, filed police reports. Miguel and I put up flyers as far as Albuquerque. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by something softer. Before she could respond, the radio crackled to life. All units converge on Sector 7. Heat signatures detected in the eastern arroyo. Possible match for our targets. Kiyanni switched off the radio. They're still searching the wrong area, but dawn is less than 2 hours away. Tala replaced the journal in her backpack. The fort is just beyond that ridge. We can make it. The distant whine of drones returned, multiple units by the sound of it. The land changed as they approached the ridge, older, touched by something beyond mere geology. Kiyanni felt it in his bones, the subtle shift that told him they had crossed into what the elders called strong ground, land where Apache blood had been spilled and prayers had been spoken for centuries. We're on the old boundary now, he told Tala, his voice dropping instinctively. Our ancestors considered everything beyond this ridge sacred. Tala ran her fingers along a weathered juniper as they passed. Grandmother used to say certain places, remember. She was right. Kiyanni pointed to a narrow path winding up the hillside. This trail was used by medicine gatherers for generations before the reservation boundaries were drawn. They climbed in silence, the exertion warming their bodies against the pre-dawn chill. Near the top, Kiyanni paused before a rock face marked with faded red symbols, ancient handprints and geometric patterns caught in the beam of his flashlight. Petroglyphs, Tala whispered, recognition in her voice. You showed me these when I was little. Older than the fort, Kiyanni confirmed. Older than the first Spanish explorers. Our people's map. He traced the pattern with his fingertips, feeling the slight depressions in the stone. These symbols mark water sources, game trails, and... He hesitated, then continued. Hiding places. Escape routes. Tala stepped closer, studying the markings with new interest. Can you still read them? Some. My grandfather taught me before he passed. Kiyanni's light followed a particular sequence of symbols. This one speaks of a path beneath the earth, a way through darkness to safety. The fort tunnels? Maybe. Or something older that the fort was built upon. He pointed to another symbol. This marks a place where the barrier between worlds is thin, where ancestors can hear more clearly. Something flickered in Tala's expression, skepticism battling with hope. Do you really believe that? Kiyanni considered his answer carefully. I believe our ancestors understood this land in ways we've forgotten. Their knowledge kept them alive against impossible odds. The moment was broken by the distant sound of engines, ATVs by the pitch, moving fast across the desert floor. They've changed search patterns, Kiyanni said, switching off his light, using the terrain to funnel us toward the fort. Why would they drive us toward our destination? Because they know it too. They're expecting us there. Tala's expression hardened. Then we changed the rules. She pulled the night vision goggles over her eyes and scanned the landscape. After a moment, she pointed to an unremarkable section of the rock face. There, the petroglyphs show a spiral there, but the actual rock has a different pattern. Kiyanni examined where she indicated, impressed by her observation. Running his hands along the surface, he felt a slight draft. Applying pressure to specific points, a section of stone shifted, revealing a narrow opening. Hidden entrance, he breathed, probably leads to the same tunnel system as the fort, but they won't know about this access point. The ATVs grew louder, multiple vehicles converging on their position. With no time for hesitation, they squeezed through the opening one by one. Inside, the passage descended steeply into darkness. They had gone perhaps 50 yards when explosions rocked the night behind them. The ground trembled, dust raining from the tunnel ceiling. "They're blasting," Kiyanni realized with growing anger, "destroying the petroglyphs to seal the entrances." Through a small fissure in the rock, they watched as men in tactical gear placed more charges along the sacred rock face. The ancient handprints and symbols disappeared in clouds of dust and stone. "Erasing our history," Tala whispered, rage and grief mingling in her voice. Kiyanni's hand went to the knife at his belt, every muscle tensed to spring. Only Tala's firm grip on his arm held him back. "We can't help anyone if we're dead," she said. "They're desecrating sacred land to draw you out." The truth of her words did nothing to cool his fury, but he nodded. "The tunnels will take us to the fort. From there, we can find a way to make them pay." As they continued deeper into the earth, Kiyanni felt the presence of those who had come before, warriors and survivors who had faced their own impossible battles on this same ground. The tunnel narrowed, then widened, ancient passages carved by water and human hands. Periodically, Kiyanni pointed out subtle markings on the walls. Apache trail signs invisible to untrained eyes. After nearly an hour of careful progress, they reached a junction where the rough-hewn passage intersected with more structured stonework. "Army engineering," Kiyanni whispered, running his hand along the precisely cut blocks. "We're under the fort now." The air changed, carrying the musty scent of enclosed spaces and old wood. A wooden ladder led upward through a square opening in the ceiling. Kiyanni climbed first, rifle ready, emerging into what had once been a storage cellar. Decades of dust covered abandoned crates and broken furniture. Tala followed, eyes adjusting to the dimness. "I remember this place," she said softly. "You brought me here for my 10th birthday. I thought it was boring then." A half-smile crossed Kiyanni's face. "You wanted to go to the water park in Albuquerque instead. I was an ungrateful brat." "You were a kid," he corrected gently. They moved cautiously through the cellar to a stairway leading to the fort's main level. Kiyanni froze, raising a hand for silence. Above them, floorboards creaked under heavy footsteps. "They beat us here," he breathed. Tala nodded, unsurprised. "There's a helipad on the north side. They must have brought in additional forces." Kiyanni's brow furrowed. "How do you know the layout so well?" "After I escaped, I studied everything about Harland's operation. This fort is mentioned in their security protocols. It's a secondary command post." The revelation sank in. They hadn't fled to sanctuary, but walked into the heart of enemy territory. Kiyanni reassessed their options with tactical precision. "The tunnel system is extensive," he whispered. "Maps in the army archive showed at least 3 levels beneath the main structure. Most of the entries were sealed during the fort's abandonment, but the Apache passages wouldn't appear on military blueprints." From his pocket, he withdrew a small flashlight and shone it on the cellar floor, searching until he found what he sought, a faint discoloration in the stonework, forming a spiral pattern. "Here," he said, kneeling, "help me with this section." Together they shifted a seemingly solid stone slab, revealing another passage downward. Unlike the army construction, this opening was irregular, following the natural contours of the earth. "Our ancestors built hiding places within their prisons," Kiyanni explained as they descended. "Places the soldiers never found." The passage opened into a low-ceilinged chamber. As Kiyanni's light played across the walls, intricate paintings emerged from the darkness, figures on horseback, geometric symbols, and handprints similar to the petroglyphs outside. "It's a war council chamber," he said with quiet reverence, "where chiefs and warriors would gather to plan." Tala touched one of the painted figures, a warrior with a ceremonial headdress. "It feels like they're watching us." A metallic clang echoed from somewhere above, followed by voices and the heavy tread of boots. "Systematic search pattern," Kiyanni observed. "They're clearing the fort room by room." Tala removed the journal from her backpack, flipping pages until she found what she sought. According to Rosa's notes, they use this fort to coordinate shipments. The command center should be in what was once the officers' quarters. East wing, second floor, Kiyanni confirmed, but we can't just walk in there. From her backpack, Tala produced a tarnished object, a cavalry bugle, its brass dented but still intact. Found this when I was exploring, she explained. It was half buried near one of the mining sites. Thought it might be valuable. Kiyanni took it, an idea forming. It might be, in ways you didn't expect. A sudden commotion above, shouted orders, running footsteps. Someone had discovered the open cellar entrance. They know we're here, Tala whispered. Kiyanni nodded toward a dark opening at the chamber's far side. That passage should connect to the eastern tunnel system. If memory serves, it runs directly beneath the officers' quarters. The voices grew louder. Flashlight beams penetrated the cellar darkness above. Time to disappear again, Kiyanni said, leading the way into the deeper tunnels. The deeper tunnels breathed with ancient air, cool and heavy with memory. Kiyanni led them through passages that narrowed until they were forced to crouch, then widened unexpectedly into chambers where underground springs had once flowed. Their pursuers' voices faded behind them. "How do you know which way to go?" Tala whispered, hand trailing along the damp stone wall. "I don't, exactly," Kiyanni admitted, "but the Apache tunnels follow water paths. Feel the slight decline? We're heading toward where the eastern spring would have been." A sound ahead stopped them, not their hunters, something different. Kiyanni extinguished his light, hand moving to his knife. In the perfect darkness, they listened. Soft singing, a woman's voice, barely audible, in the ancient language. A morning song, Kiyanni breathed, recognition flickering in his eyes. Before he could stop her, Tala called out in response, a phrase her grandmother had taught her, one of the few Apache expressions she still remembered. The singing stopped. Silence stretched taut between heartbeats. Then came light, not the harsh beam of tactical flashlights, but the warm glow of a tin lantern. It illuminated an elderly man, his copper face deeply lined, dark eyes sharp beneath silver hair, tied in a traditional braid. "Joseph Two Hawks," Kiyanni said, lowering his weapon in shock. The old man nodded once. "Kiyanni Redhawk, you walk the warpath tonight. You know each other." Tala looked between them. "Joseph was a friend of my father's," Kiyanni explained. "Elder on the tribal council before he faltered, confusion evident. Before I disappeared," Joseph finished, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. "The outside world thinks I died 3 winters ago. Easier that way." He gestured for them to follow, lantern light casting long shadows as he led them through a passage Kiyanni hadn't noticed. It opened into a larger chamber where 2 more figures waited, a middle-aged woman tending a small ventilated cookfire and a girl about Tala's age. "Lucia." Tala rushed forward, embracing the other girl. "I thought you'd be miles away by now." "I made it to the highway," Lucia replied, her accent marking her as from further south. "But they had checkpoints. Joseph found me hiding in an arroyo, brought me here." The older woman approached, offering a small leather pouch to Kiyanni. "Medicine bundle," she explained, "for protection." Kiyanni accepted it with appropriate reverence. "We're being hunted," he told Joseph. "Men with military gear. They'll find these tunnels eventually." "They already search," Joseph confirmed. "But they do not know what we know." He pointed to crude drawings on the chamber wall, a map of the tunnel system far more extensive than Kiyanni had realized. "The army built their fort on our sacred site. We built our refuge beneath their floors." The woman spoke up. "I am Anna. My son Daniel was taken 6 months ago. He escaped with these others, but was recaptured yesterday." Her voice remained steady, despite the pain in her eyes. "They're holding him in the east wing." Kiyanni and Tala exchanged glances. "That's where their command center is," Tala said. Joseph nodded. "We have been watching, learning their patterns, waiting for the right moment." He studied Tala's backpack. "You carry evidence?" "Names, locations, ledgers," she confirmed. "Enough to expose everything." "Then you are what we have been waiting for." Joseph removed something from a niche in the rock wall, a hand-drawn map on deerskin. "These are the remaining tunnel entrances. Some lead inside their secured areas." As they gathered around the map, Anna explained their observations. 12 men patrol the fort itself. Another 8 secure the perimeter. They change shifts at dawn and dusk. Dawn is less than an hour away, Kiyanni noted, checking his watch. The helicopter returns then, Lucia added, with El Jefe, the boss. Victor Harland, Tala said grimly. Joseph's eyes narrowed. Harland, the name is a curse on this land for generations. We need to get this evidence out, Kiyanni said, tapping Tala's backpack, and free the captives, including Daniel. There is a working radio in their command post, Joseph said. Military frequency that reaches the tribal police. A plan began forming in Kiyanni's mind. If we can access that radio, alert the authorities. We have tried before, Anna interrupted. 3 of our people died in the attempt. You didn't have inside knowledge of their operation, Tala countered, determination hardening her voice. Or this. She held up the confiscated night vision goggles. Joseph studied them both, wisdom and wariness in his ancient eyes. The ancestors guide your steps tonight. Kiyanni Redhawk. I have seen it in the smoke. From a basket near the fire, he retrieved something wrapped in red cloth, a traditional medicine bundle, more elaborate than Anna's. Take this. It has protected our people in darkness for many years. The plan crystallized quickly, divide to multiply their effectiveness. Kiyanni would lead Joseph and Anna through the eastern tunnels to secure an escape route and assess the command center. Meanwhile, Tala and Lucia would use a different passage to locate Daniel and any other captives. 2 hours, Kiyanni told Tala, checking his watch. If we haven't rendezvoused by then, make for the southern exit with the evidence. Get to the highway. She gripped his arm. I'm not leaving without you. This isn't about us, he replied firmly. It's about stopping them, permanently. Something passed between them, an understanding deeper than words. Tala nodded reluctantly. Before they separated, Joseph performed a brief blessing, touching each forehead with pigment from his medicine bundle. May your footsteps be silent, your vision clear. Kiyanni led his small team through passages that grew increasingly precise in their construction, transitioning from natural cave formations to the deliberate stonework of military engineers. When they reached a rusted iron door, he paused. Ammunition storage, he whispered, should lead to the northeastern bastion. The ancient hinges protested as they eased the door open, revealing a cobwebbed chamber stacked with empty wooden crates. Joseph pointed to boot prints in the dust. Recent, within hours. Kiyanni nodded. They're sweeping methodically. We need to stay ahead of their search pattern. They navigated through the abandoned storage rooms, eventually reaching a narrow staircase. At the top, Kiyanni carefully tested a trap door in the ceiling. It opened to reveal the fort's inner courtyard, still in pre-dawn darkness. Through night vision goggles, he surveyed their position. Guards patrolled the ramparts, professionals with tactical gear and communication equipment. Across the courtyard stood the officers' quarters, light spilling from windows on the second floor. That's our target, he whispered, but we need a distraction. Anna reached into her pocket and produced a tarnished object, an old military radio, battered but intact. Found it in one of the storage rooms months ago, she explained. We've been too afraid to use it. Kiyanni examined it with expert hands. The batteries were dead, but the mechanism seemed sound. With a power source, this could work. A memory surfaced from his army days, a technique used in desert operations when conventional communications failed. He removed the battery from his flashlight and, with Joseph's knife, carefully modified the connections to fit the radio's terminals. Temporary fix, he explained, might give us a few minutes of operation. The radio crackled to life, its dials glowing weakly. Kiyanni tuned it to the frequency he'd heard on the mercenaries' equipment. Now we become ghosts, he said, a grim smile touching his lips. In his most authoritative voice, he spoke into the receiver. Perimeter breach, west wall, multiple subjects, respond immediately. The effect was immediate. Guards on the ramparts turned, several rushing toward the western side of the fort. Through the goggles, Kiyanni watched their coordinated response. Professional, but now stretched thinner. The Apache were masters of phantom attacks, Joseph commented with quiet appreciation, drawing soldiers away from their posts with sounds in the night. When enough guards had repositioned, Kiyanni led them across the courtyard, staying in the shadows of crumbling walls. They reached the officers' quarters through a side entrance, finding themselves in what had once been the kitchen. Voices drifted from upstairs, tense conversation in English and Spanish. Through a crack in the ceiling, Kiyanni caught fragments. Helicopter landing in 20 minutes. The sheriff is on his way. Harland wants the girl alive. A radio base station sat on a counter, more sophisticated than the handheld units. Kiyanni studied it, recognizing the model from his military days. This reaches beyond the jammers, he whispered, direct line to regional command centers. Anna pointed to a staircase at the rear of the kitchen. They keep the captives on the top floor. Daniel is there. Joseph touched Kiyanni's arm, directing his attention to a bulletin board on the wall. Pinned there was a map of the region with marked locations, processing facilities, transport routes, and collection points. Beside it hung a duty roster with unfamiliar names. Evidence, Kiyanni said, carefully photographing both with the camera from Tala's backpack. Boots thumped on the floor above, someone descending the stairs. With silent signals, Kiyanni directed Joseph and Anna behind a storage cabinet. A guard entered, heading straight for the radio. Kiyanni moved without hesitation, the skills of his scouting days returning with fluid precision. The western tunnels narrowed until Tala and Lucia had to crawl on hands and knees, the rough stones scraping their palms. Unlike the eastern passages her father had taken, these showed no signs of military modification, purely Apache in origin, hidden for generations. How much further? Tala whispered, her knees aching. Not far, Lucia replied, her voice barely audible. This passage goes directly beneath the barracks where they're holding Daniel. From her pocket, Tala removed a small leather pouch, tracking beads her grandmother had given her as a child. She placed one at each junction they passed, a silent breadcrumb trail marking their path. Smart, Lucia observed. In case we need to run. The tunnel eventually opened into a small chamber with a vertical shaft above, moonlight filtering through what appeared to be a drainage grate. Lucia pointed upward. That leads to the courtyard between the barracks and the main building. Guards patrol every 15 minutes. Tala checked the time. It's been 12 minutes since we left my father. The guard should be passing soon. They waited in silence, watching the grate. Sure enough, Boots appeared, paused, then continued. Tala counted to 30 after the sound faded. Now, she whispered. Together they pushed the grate upward, the ancient iron protesting slightly. Tala went first, scanning the courtyard before pulling Lucia up behind her. They ducked into the shadow of a stone trough as another guard appeared at the far end of the yard. Third window, Lucia murmured once the guard had passed. Second floor. The barracks loomed before them, a 2-story stone structure with narrow windows. No lights showed inside. The captives would be kept in darkness. I'll boost you, Tala said, interlacing her fingers to make a step. Lucia nodded, placing her foot in Tala's hands. With a grunt of effort, Tala lifted her to the window ledge. Lucia peered inside, then gave a low whistle, their arranged signal. Moments later, she had the window open and was helping Tala climb through. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with fear. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness, shapes became visible, 5 figures huddled against the far wall, wrists bound with zip ties. Daniel? Lucia called softly. One figure stirred. Lucia, how? No time, she interrupted, rushing to him. We're getting out. Tala examined the door, solid wood with an electronic keypad lock. Modern security on a historic building, she muttered. Typical Harland carelessness. From her backpack, she removed Rosa's journal, flipping to a page marked with a red thread. Try this code, she told Lucia, pointing to a sequence of numbers. Rosa documented the standard combinations they use. While Lucia worked on the lock, Tala cut the captive's restraints with her father's knife. All teenagers, all bearing the same branded mark she carried on her own wrist. I know you're scared, she told them quietly, but we have a way out. Stay silent, move only when we tell you. The youngest, a boy no more than 14, looked at her with hollow eyes. They'll just find us again. Not this time, Tala promised, gripping his shoulder. We're ending this. Tonight. The keypad beeped softly as Lucia entered the final digit. The lock disengaged with a click that seemed thunderous in the silence. Lucia eased the door open, checking the hallway. "Clear," she whispered. Tala led the group toward the back stairs, using hand signals her father had taught her years ago. Stop, listen, proceed. The tracking instincts she'd tried so hard to forget came flooding back, useful now in ways she'd never imagined. At the bottom of the stairs, she paused, sensing something wrong. The air felt different, disturbed. Someone had passed through recently. She motioned everyone to freeze, then carefully peered around the corner. A guard stood at the rear exit, back to them, radio in hand. Tala retreated, mind racing. The window route would take too long with 7 people. They needed another way. Daniel pointed upward, mouthing roof access. Tala nodded. The old barracks would have a trap door to the roof for ventilation. They retraced their steps to the 2nd floor, finding a ladder to a small hatch. One by one, they climbed onto the flat roof of the barracks, crouching low to avoid being silhouetted against the lightening sky. Dawn was approaching. They had maybe 20 minutes before full light. In the distance, the distinctive thump of helicopter blades grew louder. "Harland's coming," Lucia whispered, fear evident in her voice. Tala surveyed their position, seeing the officers' quarters where her father would be. Between the buildings lay 30 yards of open courtyard, now patrolled by alert guards responding to some disturbance. "My father's creating a diversion," she realized. "We need to move now while they're distracted." The guard never saw Kiyanni coming. One moment he was reaching for the radio, the next he was unconscious, lowered silently to the floor. Kiyanni dragged him behind the cabinet, securing him with his own zip ties. "We need to move quickly," he told Joseph and Anna. "Someone will miss him soon." As they prepared to ascend the stairs to the command center, the main door to the building swung open. Kiyanni gestured sharply, and they melted into the shadows of the kitchen's alcove. Heavy boots crossed the threshold, accompanied by the distinctive jingle of spurs, an affectation Kiyanni recognized immediately. Sheriff Tom Collins had arrived. "Quite a mess you've got here, Martinez," the sheriff's voice drawled. "One teenage girl gives your entire security team the slip, and now we've got Apache ghosts in the tunnels." A second man responded, his accent marking him as one of the mercenary commanders. "We have the fort secured, Sheriff. They're trapped." "They better be. Harland's ETA is 15 minutes, and he's not in a forgiving mood." Kiyanni peered carefully around the edge of the alcove. Tom Collins stood with his back to them, the silver star on his tan uniform catching the weak light. Beside him, a man in tactical gear consulted a tablet. "We've got movement on the west barracks roof," Martinez reported. "Could be our missing captives." "Tala," Kiyanni breathed, tension coiling in his muscles. The sheriff snorted. "Redhawk's kid causing trouble. Like father. Like daughter." He adjusted his gun belt with practiced ease. "I'll handle this personally. Maintain radio silence until I give the all clear." As Collins turned to leave, Martinez spoke again. "Sir, what about the evidence the girl collected? Harland wants it destroyed." "One problem at a time, son." The sheriff's voice hardened. "Find me Kiyanni Redhawk. He's the real threat. Apache scout with 20 years military experience doesn't just disappear." When both men had exited toward the courtyard, Kiyanni turned to his companions. "Change of plans. I'm going after the sheriff. Joseph, get Anna to the radio. Contact tribal police Captain Bigay directly. Tell him federal jurisdiction has been compromised." Joseph nodded gravely. "And you?" Kiyanni checked his rifle. "I'm going to buy you time." Before they could argue, he slipped out a side window, using the building's shadow to conceal his movement. The eastern sky was lightening, dawn approaching with merciless certainty. In the main courtyard, Collins and Martinez had separated, the sheriff heading toward the barracks, while the mercenary commander returned to the command post. Kiyanni circled behind a crumbling wall, positioning himself to intercept Collins. As the sheriff approached the barracks alone, Kiyanni stepped into his path, rifle raised. "Hello, Tom." Collins froze, hand hovering near his sidearm. Recognition dawned in his weathered face, followed by something like resignation. "Kiyanni, been a long time." "Not long enough." Kiyanni kept the rifle steady. You're working for Harland now. Trafficking kids. Collins's expression hardened. It's not that simple. Seems pretty simple to me. You sold your badge. You don't understand the pressure he can bring, the leverage. Collins's eyes darted to the barracks roof. Is that your girl up there, the one who's been causing all this trouble? My daughter, Kiyanni confirmed, pride evident despite the tension. She escaped their operation, gathered evidence. Something flickered across Collins's face, regret perhaps. I never wanted kids involved. That was Harland's idea. Desperate workers who wouldn't be missed. You could have stopped it. Could I? The sheriff laughed bitterly. You've been out on your ranch too long, old friend. You don't know what Harland's become. The connections he has. The reach. Kiyanni's jaw tightened. I know enough. You're going to help us end this. Collins shook his head slowly. Can't do that, Kiyanni. Too deep now. In one fluid motion, the sheriff drew his weapon, but Kiyanni had anticipated the move, dropping to one knee as he fired a single shot. The bullet struck Collins's shoulder, spinning him backward. The sheriff's gun clattered to the ground as he clutched his bleeding arm. You always were the better shot, he gasped. Kiyanni approached cautiously, kicking the fallen weapon away. Your deputies, are they involved? Most don't know. Think it's just security for mining operations. Collins grimaced in pain. Rodriguez and Valdez are clean. They've been asking questions. From the roof of the barracks, Tala called down, Dad, helicopter incoming. The distant thrum of rotors confirmed her warning. Kiyanni pulled Collins to his feet, removing the sheriff's badge and pocketing it. Your choice, Tom. Help us stop this or go down with Harland. The sheriff met his gaze, decades of shared history passing between them. What do you need? The helicopter descended onto the fort's northern clearing, its downdraft stirring dust into golden swirls in the first light of dawn. Kiyanni and Collins took cover behind the barracks wall as the aircraft settled onto its skids. That's Harland's private chopper, Collins explained, still clutching his wounded shoulder. Military grade, like everything else he owns. The rotors slowed, but didn't stop, positioned for a quick departure. The door slid open, and a figure emerged, tall and imposing even at a distance. Victor Harland stepped onto New Mexico soil, wearing an immaculate suit despite the early hour, his silver hair unmoved by the rotor wash. 2 bodyguards flanked him as he strode toward the command building. He brings his own security, Collins muttered. Doesn't trust the contractors. Kiyanni studied the mining magnate through narrowed eyes. That's the man who branded my daughter. Harland doesn't dirty his hands personally, Collins replied. But yes, it's his operation. From the barracks roof, Tala and the others remained hidden, watching the new arrival. Kiyanni signaled for them to stay down. Martinez emerged from the command building, meeting Harland with a stiff formality that suggested fear rather than respect. Their conversation was brief, the mercenary commander gesturing toward the barracks as he delivered his report. Harland's response was cold, controlled fury. Even from a distance, his displeasure was evident in the rigid set of his shoulders and the sharp gestures that punctuated his commands. He's not happy, Collins observed. Means he'll be dangerous. What's in the briefcase? Kiyanni asked, noticing the slim attaché case handcuffed to one bodyguard's wrist. Corporate documents, probably. Harland's expanding the operation. New mines, new processing facilities. Collins's voice dropped. There's a proposal to relocate 3 more tribal communities. Already has federal approval. The revelation ignited something primal in Kiyanni's chest. The same government that had employed him as a scout, now sanctioning the displacement of his people. Again, Harland finished berating Martinez and turned toward the barracks, adjusting his cuffs with deliberate precision as he approached. When he spoke, his voice carried across the courtyard, refined, educated, utterly cold. I know you're here, Miss Redhawk. Your resourcefulness has been impressive, if inconvenient. Let's discuss terms for your surrender. Kiyanni tensed, but Collins gripped his arm. Don't. His bodyguards are Special Forces. They'll drop you before you clear the wall. On the roof, Tala remained wisely silent, though Kiyanni could sense her struggle to contain her fury. Harland continued, pacing the courtyard with the confidence of a man who owned everything his gaze fell upon. The evidence you've gathered is ultimately meaningless. These operations have federal security clearance, classified as critical mineral resource development. He stopped, hands clasped behind his back. However, I'm prepared to offer you and your companions relocation packages, generous compensation, new identities. All I require is the return of my property, the documentation, and of course, the workers. Workers, Kiyanni whispered in disgust. Children he's enslaved. Collins's face had gone pale, either from blood loss or revelation. I didn't know about the federal clearance. He told us it was just under-the-table arrangements with local officials. You believed what was convenient, Kiyanni replied sharply. When no response came to his offer, Harland signaled to Martinez. Commence flooding the tunnel system. If our guests won't come out, we'll flush them out. The order sent a chill through Kiyanni. Joseph and Anna were still in the tunnels, making their way to the radio. He can't do that, Collins protested weakly. Those tunnels are historic. He doesn't care about history, Kiyanni said. Just profit. As if hearing him, Harland turned in their direction. And Sheriff Collins, I know you're out there too. Your retirement package has just been terminated. Consider our arrangement dissolved. The mining magnate returned to the command building, leaving his bodyguards posted at the entrance. Moments later, the ominous sound of pumps starting echoed across the courtyard. He's really doing it, Collins said in disbelief, flooding the entire system. Kiyanni's mind raced, calculating options, escape routes, time remaining. How long before the lower tunnels fill? 20 minutes, maybe less. Collins winced as he shifted position. What's your play, Kiyanni? Kiyanni looked up at the barracks roof, where his daughter and the other captives remained hidden, then toward the command building, where Harland had disappeared. We're out of time for subtlety, he said grimly. Now we fight. Kiyanni moved swiftly along the barracks wall, signaling Tala and the others to hold position. Using hand gestures he'd taught her years ago, he directed her toward the southern corner of the roof. Understanding immediately, Tala led the rescued captives to the indicated position. There, an ancient oak grew close enough to the building that its sturdy branches nearly touched the roofline. That tree was my lookout spot when I was stationed here, Collins murmured, watching Tala organize the teenagers into a careful descent. Always thought it was a security risk. Today it's salvation, Kiyanni replied, covering their escape with his rifle trained on the courtyard. One by one, the young captives climbed down, Lucia helping the youngest boy who trembled with each movement. Tala came last, dropping the final few feet with practiced grace. The family reunion was brief but intense, Kiyanni pulling Tala into a tight embrace that spoke volumes more than words could convey. The tunnels are flooding, he told her quickly. Joseph and Anna went to contact tribal police from the command center radio. That's where Harland is, Tala responded, glancing toward the building, with the corporate documents that would prove everything. Collins leaned heavily against the tree, his wounded shoulder leaving a dark stain on his uniform. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs beneath the command building, he offered, part of the original fort design, ventilation and waste removal. Show me, Kiyanni demanded. The sheriff nodded toward a rusted grate partially hidden by scrub brush. There. Leads directly to the central chamber. You're coming with us, Kiyanni told the rescued teenagers. Stay close, move only when I signal. As the group hurried toward the grate, Lucia asked the question they were all thinking, what about the men with guns? They're focused on the main entrances, Kiyanni explained, prying the grate open with his knife, expecting us to come out, not go deeper in. The passage beyond was narrow and foul-smelling, but large enough to crawl through. Collins went first, despite his injury, followed by the teenagers. Tala and Kiyanni brought up the rear, covering their retreat. The evidence in my backpack, Tala whispered as they moved. It's enough to expose the operation, but not enough to shut down the corporation. Harland's briefcase, Kiyanni nodded. Corporate expansion plans, federal approvals. If we had both, her eyes lit with dangerous determination. One miracle at a time, he cautioned, though pride flickered across his face at her strategic thinking. The passage gradually widened until they could stand in a low-ceilinged chamber. Ancient brick walls glistened with moisture, and the distant sound of pumps vibrated through the stone. Storage cellar, Collins explained. Original army design. Above us should be the command center floor. And Joseph and Anna? Tala asked. If they found the radio, they'd be in the communications room, east side. The ceiling above them had a wooden hatch, likely used for delivering supplies in the fort's active days. Kiyanni tested it gently, locked from above, but the wood was old, weakened by decades of humidity. Water began seeping into the chamber from the lower passages, first a trickle, then a steady flow. The floodings reached this level, Kiyanni observed grimly. We're running out of time. From his pack, he removed a canteen marked with the Redhawk family symbol, a hawk with outstretched wings embracing a lightning bolt. He offered it first to the youngest captive. Drink, he instructed. It's clean water. You'll need your strength. As the canteen passed from hand to hand, Kiyanni outlined his plan. Collins and I will create a diversion. Tala, you lead the others to the east wing, find Joseph and Anna. What about Harland? She asked. If we get that radio working, he won't matter. Tribal police can bring federal agents. Collins shook his head. You don't understand Harland's connections. He'll claim national security, classify everything. Evidence will disappear. Then we need his corporate documents too, Tala insisted. Everything in that briefcase. Water continued rising, now ankle-deep and climbing. The teenagers huddled together, fear evident despite their determination. We need to move now, Kiyanni decided. The water works in our favor. They'll be dealing with the flooding, not expecting an attack from below. He positioned himself beneath the hatch, muscles tensing for the effort. Once we're up, we'll have minutes at most before they respond. Tala moved beside him, placing her hand on his arm. In that moment, the years of separation seemed to dissolve, father and daughter united in purpose. I'm proud of you, he said simply. She nodded, eyes glistening. I know. Let's finish this. The wooden hatch splintered under Kiyanni's calculated force, not an explosion of violence, but a precise application of pressure at structural weak points. The crack echoed through the command center like a gunshot. Before the guards could react, Kiyanni had already pulled himself through the opening, Collins's antique cavalry bugle in hand. The brassy notes of charge filled the room, disorienting the two mercenaries who stood by a bank of monitoring equipment. In their moment of confusion, Collins emerged behind Kiyanni, sheriff's badge prominently displayed despite his bloody shoulder. Federal operation, he bellowed with practiced authority. Stand down immediately. The gambit bought precious seconds, enough for Kiyanni to close the distance and neutralize the first guard with a precision strike. The second reached for his weapon but hesitated at Collins's uniform, a fatal pause that ended with him unconscious beside his colleague. Not bad for an old scout, Collins remarked, securing the door with a chair. And a corrupt sheriff? Kiyanni replied, no humor in his voice as he collected the guards' weapons. Through the hatch came Tala and the others, moving with the quiet efficiency of those accustomed to captivity and escape. The command center was smaller than expected, a central room with monitoring equipment and 3 adjoining chambers. East room for communications, Collins directed, leaning heavily against the wall. Harland will be in the main office, north. Tala organized the teenagers with hand signals, pointing Lucia and Daniel towards supply cabinets where they might find useful items. The youngest boy she stationed as lookout at the window. They'll know we're here soon, Kiyanni said, checking the captured weapons. We need to work fast. From the adjoining eastern room came a muffled thump, then a cry of pain. Kiyanni moved instantly, weapon ready as he pushed open the door. Inside, Joseph crouched beside an unconscious guard, an ancient wooden war club in his hand. Anna stood at a radio console, microphone in hand, speaking rapidly in Apache. Joseph. Kiyanni lowered his weapon in relief. The old man smiled grimly. We had similar ideas, my friend. The radio. Anna turned, hope lighting her weathered face. Connected to Captain Begay, tribal police are mobilizing, but they need 30 minutes. We don't have 30 minutes, Tala said from the doorway. Water's rising fast, and Harland's men will check in soon. As if summoned by her words, a voice crackled over the facility's intercom. Command center, report status. Why is there no response from monitoring station? Joseph moved to the war club to Kiyanni. smooth dark wood worn by generations of hands, its striking end weighted with a round stone secured by rawhide bindings. "Found this in a sealed chamber," he explained. "The spirits provide what is needed." Kiyanni accepted the weapon with appropriate reverence. From childhood, he'd heard stories of such clubs, used by Apache warriors in their most desperate battles. "We need to separate Harland from his bodyguards," he said, formulating a plan. "Get the briefcase." Daniel emerged from the supply closet, arms full of equipment. "Found these," he announced, displaying night vision headsets and what appeared to be remote detonators. "Blasting caps," Collins identified them, "for clearing tunnel collapses." Tala's eyes lit with inspiration. "The fort's acoustics," she said. "Remember how sounds echo through the chamber system?" Kiyanni nodded, understanding immediately. Psychological warfare, Apache style. They worked with practiced speed, teenagers who had survived captivity, now turning their resourcefulness toward freedom. Lucia and Daniel placed the blasting caps at strategic points throughout the adjoining rooms, while Tala programmed the detonation sequence. 3-minute delay, she explained, just enough time. Collins, growing paler by the minute, provided the layout of the remaining rooms. "Harland's office has a private exit to the helipad. He'll run for the chopper when things go bad." "Let him," Kiyanni said. "That's where we'll be waiting." Joseph began singing softly, an ancient war chant that seemed to vibrate through the stone walls. One by one, the others fell silent, the power of the song filling the space between heartbeats. When he finished, Joseph touched each of their foreheads with red ochre from his medicine bundle. "For clear vision," he explained. "For strong hearts." Tala activated the detonators, then moved to the command center's control panel. With a few keystrokes, she killed the lights throughout the complex. Darkness engulfed them, complete and disorienting for Harland's men, but navigable for those with night vision equipment and those who had lived in darkness. "Now," Kiyanni said, war club in hand, "we become the ghosts they fear." The first explosion rocked the western wing, followed seconds later by another in the southern corridor. Disoriented shouts echoed through the fort as guards responded to phantom threats. Chaos consumed the fort. Guards shouted contradictory orders as explosions continued at seemingly random intervals. Through it all, Kiyanni moved like a shadow, the night vision goggles revealing a world painted in ghostly green. "North corridor clear," he whispered into the captured radio. "Moving to target." Tala's voice crackled back. "East wing secured, hostages in position." They had separated to multiply their effectiveness, Kiyanni heading for Harland's office while Tala led the rescued teenagers to the helipad. Joseph and Anna maintained control of the communications room, coordinating their movements. The plan was simple but effective: create enough confusion to isolate Harland from his security, drive him toward the helicopter, and capture him with the corporate documents. Kiyanni approached the office door, war club ready. Inside, voices argued, Harland's cultured tones sharpened with anger. "I don't care about the water level, find them." A bodyguard responded, "Sir, we need to evacuate. Security protocol." "I'm not leaving without those documents," Harland snapped. "The girl has enough evidence to trigger an investigation." Kiyanni placed the final blasting cap beside the door, then retreated around the corner. The detonation was small but precise, blowing the lock mechanism without destroying the door itself. In the confusion that followed, he struck. The first bodyguard went down before he could draw his weapon. The second fired wildly in the darkness, bullets embedding in the stone wall as Kiyanni ducked low and swept the man's legs from under him. When he straightened, Harland stood before him, elegant suit now, dust-covered, silver hair disheveled, but his eyes remained cold and calculating. The briefcase was handcuffed to his wrist. "Kiyanni Redhawk," the mining magnate said, recognition dawning. "The Apache scout, I should have known." "You should have," Kiyanni agreed. War club held ready. "You took my daughter." "Business," Harland replied, backing toward a side door. "Nothing personal, simply resource allocation." It became personal when you put your brand on her skin. Something flickered across Harland's face. Not remorse, but annoyance at being challenged. "Your people have always been obstacles to progress. sitting on valuable resources while living in poverty. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so wasteful. Kiyanni advanced slowly. That land was ours before your grandfather stole it, before your father poisoned the water, before you started stealing our children. History is written by the victors, Mr. Redhawk, and I assure you I will be victorious. Harland's hand moved to his jacket, withdrawing a small pistol. Your daughter's evidence will disappear. My operation will continue under federal protection. Resources must be secured for national interests. The gunshot was deafening in the confined space. Kiyanni felt the bullet pass inches from his head, embedding in the wall behind him. Before Harland could fire again, he closed the distance, the war club connecting with the mining magnate's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. Harland lunged for the side door, yanking it open to reveal the helipad beyond. Dawn had broken fully now, bathing the scene in golden light. The helicopter waited, rotors already turning. But between Harland and his escape stood Tala and the rescued teenagers, forming a line of silent accusation. Each face bore the same branded mark, his mark, visible in the morning light. You're nothing but property, Harland snarled, desperation breaking through his composed exterior. All of you. From above came the distinctive whoop of police sirens. On the horizon, vehicles approached, tribal police responding to Joseph's call. It's over, Harland, Kiyanni said, emerging from the building behind him. The mining magnate's composure cracked completely. With unexpected strength born of desperation, he charged toward the teenagers, briefcase swinging wildly. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As Harland lunged forward, a large shadow passed overhead. All eyes turned skyward as a magnificent golden eagle soared across the fort, its wingspan blocking the sun momentarily. In that second of distraction, Tala moved. The skills her father had taught her, the heritage she had once rejected, flowed through her body as she sidestepped Harland's charge and delivered a precise strike to his knee. The mining tycoon crumpled, briefcase still attached to his wrist. As he fell, the eagle circled lower, a single feather drifting down to land at Kiyanni's feet. Grandfather Eagle, Joseph breathed from the doorway. The messenger comes. Kiyanni picked up the feather with reverence, understanding its significance in this moment. The ancestors were witnessing their stand. The tribal police arrived with federal agents close behind. Captain Begay had understood the significance of Joseph's call and contacted the FBI's human trafficking task force. What followed was a blur of activity, statements taken, evidence secured, wounds treated. Harland remained silent and seething as agents unlocked the briefcase from his wrist. Inside, they found exactly what Tala had predicted, documents detailing the expansion of mining operations onto tribal lands, complete with federal approvals based on fraudulent environmental impact studies. Combined with Rosa's journal and Tala's evidence, it painted a damning picture that even Harland's connections couldn't obscure. These approvals will be rescinded immediately. The lead FBI agent assured Kiyanni, genuine outrage in her voice, what happened here violated every federal protection law for indigenous communities. By mid-morning, news helicopters circled overhead, documenting the scene as the rescued teenagers were reunited with frantic parents. Anna embraced her son Daniel, tears streaming freely down her weathered face. Sheriff Collins, his shoulder properly bandaged, sat in the back of an ambulance. His badge was gone, but something like peace had settled in his eyes. I'll be testifying, he told Kiyanni as paramedics prepared to transport him. About everything. Might not make up for what I've done, but it's a start. Kiyanni nodded, neither offering forgiveness nor condemnation. Some journeys each man must walk alone. Joseph approached, the medicine bundle in his hands. The elders will gather tonight, he said. To honor what happened here, you and Tala should join us. We will, Kiyanni promised, the eagle feather now secured in his shirt pocket. As the last police vehicles departed, Kiyanni found Tala standing at the fort's highest point, looking out over the desert landscape that had been both their battlefield and salvation. The morning sun highlighted the copper undertones in her dark hair, so like her mother's. What happens now? She asked as he joined her. Harland's operation will be dismantled, he replied. The mines will likely continue under different management, with proper oversight and tribal consultation. I meant with us, she clarified, turning to face him. Kiyanni considered his answer carefully. That depends on what you want, Tala. The ranch is your home for as long as you wish it to be. But I understand if you want to go back to school, build a different life. I'm not the same person who ran away 3 months ago, she said softly, and you're not the same father I left behind. No, he agreed. We've both changed. She reached into her pocket and withdrew something that made Kiyanni's breath catch, the tracking beads her grandmother had given her, which she'd used to mark their path through the tunnels. I think I need to learn more about who we are, she said. The things Mom wanted me to know, the things you know. Kiyanni's throat tightened with emotion he'd spent decades containing. I'd like that very much. 2 weeks later, they stood together on the Redhawk ranch, driving new fence posts into the boundary line that had once held Tala captive. The land seemed different now, still harsh and demanding, but vibrant with possibility. Miguel helped them work, his teenage sons alongside, all part of the community effort to rebuild what Harland had threatened. News of the trafficking operation had galvanized the surrounding ranches into a united front against further mining expansion. The new sign looks good, Miguel commented, nodding toward the ranch entrance. Where once had hung a weathered board with simply Redhawk carved into the wood, now stood a freshly painted sign. Redhawk Ranch, Kiyanni, Tala, with the family symbol of a hawk embracing a lightning bolt. That evening, as sunset painted the desert in impossible shades of orange and purple, Kiyanni and Tala sat on the porch steps. Between them lay Elena's letters, finally shared and discussed openly. Painful truths about family history, but also wisdom and love that transcended death. I understand why you kept these from me, Tala said eventually. You wanted to protect me from the pain. I was wrong, Kiyanni admitted. You deserve to know your history, both the beauty and the struggle. From the nearby mesa came the cry of a hunting hawk, circling before it landed on a fence post, watching them with fierce, intelligent eyes. Grandfather sends a scout, Tala observed, the phrase her grandmother had taught her coming naturally now. Kiyanni nodded, pride warming his chest. To make sure we're protecting what matters. The hawk took flight again, soaring into the endless New Mexico sky. Below, father and daughter continued their conversation as twilight deepened, two guardians of a legacy that would not be broken.